Sampradaya Anushtana Rakshana AbhimaN SARAN presents Jayathi Yatiraja SookthiH, English upanyasam on Yamunaithuravan Yathis or the Lord of Yathis by Sri.Amogh Chakravarthy, a disciple of Dr. Sri APN Swami.
सर्वोऽपियं समाश्रित्य सकलं भद्रमश्नुते श्रिया च भद्रया जुष्टः यस्तं भद्रं नमाम्यहं वन्दे वैकुण्ठसेनान्यं देवं सूत्रवती सखं यद्वेत्र शिखरस्पन्दे विश्वमेतद्व्यवस्थितं यस्य सारस्वतस्रोतो वकुलामोदवासितं श्रुतीनां विश्रमायालं शठारिं तमुपास्महे नाथेन मुनिनाथेन भवेयं नाथवानहं यस्य नैगमिकं तत्त्वं हस्तामलकताङ्गतं नमस्याम्यरविन्दाक्षं नाथभावे व्यवस्थितं शुद्धसत्त्वमिमं शौरेः अवतारमिवापरम् अनुज्झितक्षमायोगम् अपुण्यजनबाधकम् अस्पृष्टमदरागं तं रामं तुर्यमुपास्महे विगाहे यामुनं तीर्थं साधुवृन्दावने स्थितं निरस्तजिह्मगस्पर्शे यत्र कृष्णः कृतादरः दयानिघ्नं यतीन्द्रस्य देशिकं पूर्णमाश्रये येन विश्वसृजो विष्णोः अपूर्यतमनोरथः प्रणामं लक्ष्मणमुनिः प्रतिगृह्णातु मामकं प्रसादयति यत्सूक्तिः स्वाधीनपतिकां श्रुतिम् रामानुजदयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकं प्रपद्ये निरवद्यानां निषद्यां गुणसम्पदां शरणं भवभीतानां षट्कोपमुनीश्वरं श्रीमद्रङ्गशठारिसंयमिवराल्लब्धागमान्तद्वयं श्रीमद्वीररघूद्वहाद्यशठजित्पादारविन्दाश्रयं श्रीमद्वेदवतंसदेशिकयतेः कारुण्यवीक्षास्पदं सेवे रङ्गधुरीणशासनवशं नारायणं योगिनं वेदान्तदेशिकयतीन्द्रकटाक्षलब्धत्रय्यन्तसारमनवद्यगुणं बुधाग्रयं नारायणाद्ययतिधुर्यकृपाभिषिक्तं श्रीरङ्गनाथयतिशेखरमाश्रयामः श्रीकृष्णमार्यं करुणालयन्तं वेदान्तयुग्मं समतीतवन्तं वत्साभिजातं विदुषां वरेण्यं श्रीभाष्यसिंहं प्रणमामि नित्यम् वात्स्य श्रीकृष्णसूरीन्द्र पदपङ्कजषट्पदम् अनन्तपद्मनाभार्यं भारद्वाजमहं भजे. My namaskarams to everyone. Today I have got an opportunity to speak on the topic Yamunaithuravan Yathis. What does this mean? Yamunaithuravan is nothing but one of the very erudite scholarly acharyas who is known as Alavandar or Yamunacharya. Yathis is nothing but our Swami Ramanujacharya. In that way, we will be seeing the connection between these two acharyas. Why am I speaking about this topic during this time? That is because this is the time during when we are going to celebrate the thirunakshatrams or the avatarams day of Swami Ramanuja and also upcoming avataram day of Swami Nammazhwar. So this would be a very appropriate time to speak on this topic. So today I would be speaking on this topic, for which I show my unlimited gratitude for my Acharyan Dr. Sri APN Swami for having given me this opportunity. Before jumping into this topic, Yathis is the one which we are going to see later. What is the first half then? First half is nothing but Yamunaithuravan, that is about our Acharya Yamunacharya or Alavandar. So we will be seeing who this Alavandar was, how did his avataram took place briefly, and then we would be seeing the connection of Swami Alavandar with Swami Ramanuja. Today, this Yamunacharya was living around more than 1000 years ago, because Swami Ramanujacharya was himself living around 1000 years ago. Then Yamunacharya was living around 1150 to 1200 years ago. So during this time, you can imagine how the situations were. Why am I telling about the situations here? That's because before Yamunacharya took his avataram, that is before 1200 years, it was Nathamuni who was Yamunacharya's grandfather. Nathamuni, who was the grandfather of Yamunacharya, along with his father Ishvara Bhattar and with his son Ishvara Muni, went to North India to visit all the Divya Deshams over there. It was a complete family trip. Why so? Because all the three generations went together to have darshan of Lord and the Goddess in all these Divya Kshetrams. They had darshans at all these popular Divya Deshams, and finally they were at Vrindavanam, which is on the banks of river Yamuna. This is the place where Swami Nathamuni developed deep devotion towards Lord Krishna. That was because Yamuna was flowing in such a mild way, unlike Ganga, because Ganga flows very fast, and so in this way Yamuna was flowing unlike Ganga in a very mild way. However, the environment was very serene. Seeing all these things and contemplating on Lord Krishna and his activities, as that was Lord Krishna's avataram place, Nathamuni developed deep devotion towards Lord Krishna. This is the time when Nathamuni started contemplating on Lord Krishna and all his leelas. As Nathamuni developed deep devotion towards Lord Krishna, he stayed at Vrindavanam for a long time. Not only him, as he had gone with all his family members, that is along with his father and also son, they all stayed for a long time in Vrindavanam. After that, after a long time, they came back to their own native. That is the time when his son, that is Ishvara Muni, had a son. That is, he was a very effulgent, bright-faced son who was very attractive to see. So this child was named by Nathamuni as Yamunaithuravan. That is because Yamunaithuravan is nothing but Lord Krishna. Why did Nathamuni name his grandson as Yamunaithuravan? That is because he had developed deep devotion towards Lord Krishna by this time. That's the reason why he was named as Yamunaithuravan. This is how our Acharya Yamunacharya took his avataram. After few years of his childhood, he started his primary education, and his primary education was all with Mahabhashya Bhattar. During this time, he showed utmost interest and developed all the knowledge with being obedient to that Mahabhashya Bhattar, who was Yamunacharya's guru. We say as child prodigy, right? Who is child prodigy? One who shows his extraordinary skills at a very young age. That's whom we call as child prodigy. That's how a child prodigy was our Yamunacharya. In that way, this Yamunacharya was such a child prodigy. Why am I saying this? Because he did such a phenomenal job at a very young age of 10 years. What's that phenomenal job? Is that in the place where this ashram was located. Which ashrama? That is the ashrama where this Yamunaithuravan is studying under Mahabhashya Bhattar. That was located on the banks of Kaveri river, somewhere in Tamil Nadu. So during this time, when Mahabhashya Bhattar was not there, there was an incident which took place, which took a complete different turn in Yamunaithuravan's life. What was it? That is, when Mahabhashya Bhattar was out of town, this small boy Yamunaithuravan answered to hefty and very tall looking soldiers with full confidence, while all the other children were scared away just by seeing these soldiers. But this 10-year-old Yamunaithuravan was the only one who was very confident and spoke with complete confidence against these soldiers. What was the message? Let us see this story very briefly. When those soldiers came, they said someone has to win against a Pandita who has come here, because this Pandita has roamed all over India. He has defeated everyone in his debate, so there is no one who can anymore defeat him. This is what their argument was, and they also said that everyone has to pay double taxes as there is no one to defeat him. That's the time when Yamunaithuravan takes a very concrete stand, saying that I am here, I have got the blessings and also knowledge from my Guru Mahabhashya Bhattar. Why should I worry? I can come and defeat him in the debate. This is what a 10-year-old boy says to a big, hefty and tall soldier. Once this was said, and in a very grand way, he was took in the procession to the palace, and just by seeing him, the queen says that he is really very attractive, and queen was attracted towards the effulgence of this young boy, and he felt it was as though a Vamana Murti. Vamana came to the palace of Mahabali in the same way. He was having such an effulgent face. That's what was the feeling of the queen who saw this young boy. And there was a challenge between this queen and the king. Queen said that if this boy wins, I would like to have a bet with you. Then king said, I'm 100% sure this boy is not going to win, because he is just a small kid. He is around just 10 years. How can this boy win? That was the king's argument, and queen and king had an argument. But however, rather than argument, this was more of a bet, and king said, yes, I am ready to bet. And king said, if that boy wins, I am ready to give my half of my kingdom. And in the same way, queen said something else, and she was ready to give something on stake for this bet. So in this way, king and queen had a bet, and finally there were what was the debate was, here this boy would say some of the statements, that is Yamunaithuravan would say some of the statements. For these statements, the most popular debater across the country, who was Aki Alvan, has to refute those statements and give an answer. If he cannot refute those statements and give an answer, then the same answer would be given by the same boy, Yamunaithuravan. So in this way, the statement started. Yamunaithuravan gave 3 statements, and with all these 3 statements, Aki Alvan could not refute this and answer this. That's when Yamunaithuravan came ahead and started refuting these statements and giving explanations for these statements. Then, however, all the explanations were finished. That was the time when Aki Alvan bowed his head with all shame, because that was such a defeat. Rather than defeat, here he was proud of his all achievements, as he had defeated many popular debaters across the country, and this was the time to accept his defeat against a boy who was just 10 years old, and that was Yamunaithuravan. In this way, he could not even take his head up and see this boy's face. That's how his head bowed down in shame. Now, this is what we call a child prodigy. We don't have to look for child prodigy anywhere here and around all these days across many countries. No, that's not needed. If we just look our acharyas and their life stories, we get to know that many of our acharyas like this were all child prodigies. In this way, this is how the child prodigy would be, was shown by Yamunacharya or Yamunaithuravan. Vigahe Yamunam Tirtham Sadhu Vrindavane Sthitam Nirasta Jikmaga Sparshe Yatra Krishna Kritadharaha. This is the verse which I even recited during the starting of my upanyasam. If you see this verse, what is this verse? This is an invocatory verse in praise of Yamunaithuravan or Yamunacharya. What does this verse say? This says that there is a river which is called Yamuna, right? As I already told you, this Yamuna flows unlike Ganga in a very mild way. So this is what gives everyone the calmness to their mind, and at the same time there was a Kaliya, that is a poisonous snake, who was living in this Yamuna. And this Kaliya, he was not only living alone, he was along with his family members. This was the time when Lord Krishna used to play along with his all cowboys friends, and that was the time he used to play on the banks of river Yamuna. That was when this incident took place. That is, you all know this very well. During Krishna was playing with all these friends, that's when he had to jump into river Yamuna, and that's when he meets with Kaliya, and that Kaliya was like, his pride was at once gone when he met Krishna. That's how we see that the Kaliya was all with pride, and his pride was all gone. That's in the same way how Yamuna had connection with Lord Krishna, and Lord Krishna took away the pride of this Kaliya. Even here, Yamunacharya, coming in the Guru Parampara, has the connection with the Lord, and not only that, not only having connection, even the most proudest person, who was he? That was Aki Alvan. How Aki Alvan was defeated in the debate by a 10-year-old Yamunaithuravan. In the same way, Krishna also, as a small boy, defeated or made the pride as zero for Kaliya. So, in this way, if we see, there is a lot of similarity between Krishna, who defeated Kaliya, and here Yamunaithuravan, who defeated Aki Alvan. To such Yamunaithuravan, I pay my namaskarams or obeisances, is what this shlokam tells us. Vigahe yamunam tirtham sadhu vrindavane sthitam nirasta jihmaga sparshe yatra krishna kritadaraha. In this way, we see how Yamunacharya was a child prodigy in a small age itself, and at a later stage, he came back to the Sampradaya as one of the erudite scholarly Acharya and spread Sampradaya to a large extent. But however, he always had in mind, whatever he has spread is really not enough, because people are really ignorant and not knowing what has to be known. That is what his thoughts were, and he wanted this Sampradayam or this knowledge, our ancient knowledge, to be spread everywhere and to as many people as possible. That was his only noble cause. In this way, he was not at all satisfied with whatever he had spread. So he wanted someone else to spread this more if possible. Why? He could have spread it, right? But yes, that was not possible by him, because he came back to the Sampradaya, because as I told you, if you remember, Queen had bet the king, saying that she said the king that he has to give half the kingdom if that small boy wins in the argument. That's what happened, and he got the kingdom, and he ruled over the kingdom for many years. And after many years, that's when, after a long time, Yamunacharya came back to Sampradayam as a very erudite scholarly Acharya, and there was not much time left with him. So even with whatever time was left, even during this time, he had spread this knowledge to a very large extent, but however, he was not satisfied with this. That's why he wanted someone else to spread this more and more to every people. That's when what he did was, he got to know the news about Swami Ramanuja, because he was such a personality. And how did this news come to Yamunacharya? That was because of Tirukkachi Nambi. And Tirukkachi Nambi was one of the Acharyas, was one of the guide rather to Swami Ramanuja. In this way, through Tirukkachi Nambi, Yamunacharya heard about Swami Ramanuja, who was not called as Ramanuja at that time. He was called as Ilayalvan, and this Ilayalvan was studying under Yadav Prakasha all his primary education, and also he started some advanced education under him. That was the time when it could not go well, because the Guru was not ready to teach him, as there was arguments one after the other, and he could not tolerate those arguments. But however, why were these arguments? These arguments were because Swami Ramanuja or Ilayalvan was not able to tolerate the meanings which were interpreted in a complete opposite way rather than what has to be said, that is, what is the intended meaning of the Shrutis or the Vedas was all interpreted in a complete opposite way, which Swami Ilayalvan could not bear, and he used to tell in a very polite way which his guru could not tolerate at all. And that was the time when he had to leave. Even before he left Swami Yadav Prakasha, that was the time when Yadav Prakasha and all his students had a visit to the temple of Kanchipuram, that is Lord Varadaraja Swami. That's the time when even Yamunaithuravan or Yamunacharya comes from Srirangam to Kanchipuram. And why did Yamunacharya travel such a long distance at this age? The only reason was he wanted to see Swami Ramanuja somehow, because that's how his attraction was towards Swami Ramanuja. Somehow he wanted to see Swami Ramanuja, and that's the time when Yadav Prakasha, who is the guru of Ilayalvan or Swami Ramanuja currently, and all the students, all the other students along with Yadav Prakasha, in the group of these students, even Swami Ramanuja was present. That was the time when Tirukachi Nambi shows Yamunacharya pointing towards Swami Ramanuja that he is Ilayalvan, he is Swami Ramanuja. That's when Yamunacharya looks at Swami Ramanuja and he is really happy. That is the time when, as he had thought that he has to spread more and more this knowledge, that's the time when he got in his mind that he is the right person to spread this more and more. And that at that moment, at that place, wherever he was standing inside the temple Prakaram, he prayed looking at the temple Vimanam, which was the Punyakoti Vimanam of Kanchipuram. He prayed and did surrender to Lord Varadaraja then and there itself. Why did he surrender? He just surrendered because he wanted Lord Varadaraja to give this Ilayalvan, to spread this Sampradayam or knowledge to more and more people as possible. That's why he did surrender then and there itself by saying, Yasya prasada kalaya badhirashrunoti panguh pradhavati javena cha vaktimukaha andah prapashyati sutam labhate cha vandya tam devameva varadam sharanam gatosmi. This is what he prays, and as he prays this surrender or this act of surrender unto Lord Varadaraja, however, we all know worked very successfully, even if not immediately, after some years. All this surrender, whatever he had done and whatever thoughts were in the mind of Yamunacharya, that is to spread this Sampradayam to more and more people as possible, everything became successful as the time went on in few years. So that is what we would be seeing next about Swami Ramanujacharya, who is Yatigat Kiraivan. Why is this Swami Ramanuja known as Yatigat Kiraivan? Because Swami Ramanuja is the Lord of all Yathis, or the head of all Yathis. How do we get to know this? We get to know this because who is a leader? Normally we say leader is one who creates a leader, right? Who creates a leader or many leaders, right? So in that way, Swami Ramanuja created lot of other leaders, made lot of other leaders. That's why he is the head or the Lord of all the Yathis. How can we say that he created lot of other Yathis? We do get to know from Swami Ramanuja's Charitram that he created or he made 74 people as Simhasanadhipatis, and for many of them it was Lord Lakshmi Nrsimha who was their Aradhanamurti. That's why I started this upanyasam with Sarvopiyam Samashritya Sakalam Bhadramashnute Shriyacha Bhadraya Jushtaha Yastam Bhadram Namamyaham, which is Lakshmi Nrsimha Swami. In that way, we see Lakshmi Nrsimha Swami was the one who was with many Simhasanadhipatis, and even today he is there with many of the Simhasanadhipatis in their kulams. If we see, a leader is one who creates many leaders, right? So he created many leaders. How was he? That is, how was Swami Ramanuja? That Swami Deshikan describes in his Yatiraja Saptati. He says, Upavitina Murdhva Pundravantam Trijagat Punya Phalam Tridandahastam Sharanagata Sarthavahamide Shikaya Shekharinam Padim Yatinam. So if you see here, this is what he says, Patim Yatina. He is the head among all Yatis. Why is he so? Even physically, to look him, that's how he is. He is more than 6 feet tall. Not only that, he has a very majestic posture and stature. Along with that, he has Tridandam on one of his hands. Not only Tridandam, he has Yajnopavitam and he has a Shikha behind. That's how Swami Ramanuja looks like, describes Swami Vedanta Deshika in this verse. So that is why Swami Ramanuja is known as Yatigat Kiraivan, and this Yatigat Kiraivan suits perfectly for Swami Ramanuja. So as we see about Yatigat Kiraivan or Swami Ramanuja, we see how did Swami Yamunacharya's compositions influence Swami Ramanuja. So if we see in these lines, then we can see how there was a connection between Swami Yamunacharya and Swami Ramanuja. In that way, if we see that Yamunacharya has composed 8 of his granthams, which are summarized in a verse initially in a work called Gitartha Sangraha Raksha by Swami Deshikan. The verse goes like this: Manatvam Bhagavan Matasya Mahataha Pumsas Tatha Nirnayaha Tisra Siddhaya Atma Samvidakhila Dihishana Tattvashrayah Gitarthasya Cha Sangraha Stutiyugam Shri Shri Shayorityamon Yadgranthan Anusandhade Yatipatihi Tam Yamuneyam Numaha. In this way, here we see what are the 8 compositions by Swami Yamunacharya. If we see what are his compositions, Manatvan Bhagavan Matasya Mahataha. If we see Bhagavan Matasya, that is whatever was spoken by Bhagavan himself, that was given as a grantham which was on Pancharatra Agamam. We have another grantham which is on Emperuman or Sriman Narayana. How does this show this is on Sriman Narayana? What does this do? This is Mahapurusha Nirnaya, which shows that Sriman Narayana is the supreme. Tisra Siddhaya, and here we see that there are 3 siddhis composed by Swami Yamunacharya, which were Atma Siddhi, Samvit Siddhi and Ishvara Siddhi. We call it as Siddhi Traya. Gitarthasya Cha Sangraha, which was a Shloka Rupa commentary, that is commentary in the form of verses for Bhagavad Gita. Stutiyugam Shri Shri Shayorityamon. There was a Chatushloki composed by Yamunacharya on Goddess Mahalakshmi. Other than that, we also see one of the very popular grantham, rather than grantham, a stotram by Yamunacharya, which is nothing but, since it is popular and it is gem of stotras, it is called Stotra Ratna. In this way, these were the 8 granthams which were given by Swami Yamunacharya. Yadgranthan Anusandhade Yatipatihi. All these 8 granthams, they are always in the heart of Yatipati, who is Swami Ramanuja. To such Swami Ramanuja and to such Swami Yamunacharya, I pay my namaskarams, I bow down to them. This is what Swami Deshikan says in this verse in Gitartha Sangraha. So if we see here, this Gitartha Sangraha Raksha is a very important grantham, because this shows what was the connection between Swami Alavandar and Swami Ramanuja. Yamunacharya wanted to, however, teach Swami Ramanuja somehow, but that didn't happen. And even on the other hand, Swami Ramanuja wanted to learn under Swami Yamunacharya. That did not happen. So normally, if we see this, if we take this topic and if we see any of the upanyasams or lectures, we normally see that you probably have heard about this popular story incident which took place. That is, during Swami Ramanuja's time, Swami Ramanuja went with all curiosity to meet Swami Yamunacharya, and his 3 fingers were closed, and he got to know what was his intent, why it was closed, and by knowing the intent, he just expressed away all the desires whatever Yamunacharya had, and those 3 fingers opened. We all have heard about this story, but I would not like to go in this story because you would get this story in many places, in many lectures, but rather I would like to concentrate on the content where we have connections between Swami Yamunacharya and Swami Ramanuja. So if we see in terms of content, we see there are a lot of connections between Swami Yamunacharya and Swami Ramanuja. Here I am taking a couple of examples only, and I am showing you the connection here. But however, there are a lot of places. A lot is really not a correct word. I don't know what's the word here, because nowhere we can see that Swami Ramanuja, if he has deviated from Yamunacharya, if we see that, absolutely nowhere. So that is what is the word I have to say. Not at a lot of places he follows, everywhere he follows Yamunacharya. That's what I have to say. In that way, I am going to give a couple of examples here where he has followed Swami Yamunacharya in all his granthams. How has he followed? Now this is the question, right? Because if you see Ekalavya, what did Ekalavya do in Mahabharata? In Mahabharata, Ekalavya says that his guru is Dronacharya. But however, Dronacharya never trained Ekalavya directly. Anytime he never trained Ekalavya directly. That's how Swami Ramanuja here is, because even here if we see, Yamunacharya has seen Swami Ramanuja, but he has never trained or taught anything to Swami Ramanuja. But on the other hand, if we see Ekalavya, Dronacharya went to Ekalavya and all those incidents happened. You give me something, all those things happened. That was the time when he had trained himself by just practicing again and again. That's how Ekalavya learnt all his skills. But coming to Swami Ramanujacharya, how he learnt everything, that was through one of the channels, that is through one of the Shishyas or disciples of Swami Yamunacharya. Not just one, through 5 different Shishyas of Swami Yamunacharya. That's why Swami Ramanuja is also called as Panchacharya Padashritaha, which means he took refuge under 5 different acharyas and he learnt many things. That's what this means. So in this way, the knowledge from Yamunacharya got distributed into 5 different acharyas, and then they again came and merged in Swami Ramanujacharya. In this way, I am just taking a couple of examples here. One example related to Gita or Bhagavad Gita and its commentaries, and one example related to Brahma Sutra and its commentaries. But however, we can see this connection between Swami Ramanujacharya and Swami Yamunacharya in many other granthams. Even if we take Bhagavad Vishyam for this case, even there we can see lot of similarities or connections. So in this way, if we see the first verse of Gitartha Sangraha by Swami Yamunacharya goes like this: Swadharma Jnana Vairagya Sadhya Bhaktiyeka Gocharaha Narayanah Param Brahma Gita Shastre Samiritaha. This is what the first verse of Gitartha Sangraha says. So why are we seeing this Gitartha Sangraha? That's because for this Gitartha Sangraha of Swami Yamunacharya, Swami Deshikan, who was an Acharya who came after Swami Ramanujacharya, has given a commentary which is called as Gitartha Sangraha Raksha, which explains about each and every verse of the Gitartha Sangraha of Swami Yamunacharya. So in that, if we see this first verse, Swadharma Jnana Vairagya Sadhya Bhaktiyeka Gocharaha Narayanah Param Brahma Gita Shastre Samiritaha. In this verse, if we see the commentary by Swami Deshikan for this verse in Gitartha Sangraha Raksha, I would not go through the complete commentary. Here, I just want to show you how there was a connection between Swami Yamunacharya and Swami Ramanuja in terms of content or in terms of knowledge. That's what I wanted to show you. This Swami Deshikan has already shown. I am just reading it out for you. Samvit Siddhaucha Advitiya Shruti Vyakhyanecha Darshitam. Here, Samvit Siddhi is one of the granthams of Swami Alavandar. As I already mentioned, 8 different compositions of Swami Alavandar. Even this was one of them. So, in Samvit Siddhi, Swami Alavandar says this: Yatha Chola Nripa Samrat Advitiyosti Bhutale Iti Tat Tulya Nripati Nivarana Param Vachaha. I would not go into the meanings of all these things right now due to paucity of time. Now, I would like to focus what else Swami Alavandar has said regarding this. This is the commentary for the line Narayana Param Brahma. for this phrase, this is the commentary which he has given in Samvit Siddhi. And other than that, there is also some other commentary by Yamunacharya, which is Purusha Nirnayecha Etat Prapancho Grahyaha. So even in his another Grantham, Swami Yamunacharya says that he comments about this phrase, which is Narayana Param Brahma. So he comments about this Narayana Param Brahma in Samvit Siddhi and also Purusha Nirnayam. Again, if we see Swami Ramanuja, we are seeing the connection between Swami Alavandar and Swami Ramanuja, right? So in that way, if we see the connection between Swami Yamunacharya and Swami Ramanuja, tad etad vyapadeshadvayam shriyapatihi ityadina prarambha bhashyena vyakritam, which means here prarambha bhashyena, which shows that at the very beginning of the bhashyam, which bhashyam here? It is Gita bhashyams of Swami Ramanuja. Here he comments on this Narayana Parabrahma based on what? He comments on this based on Samvit Siddhi line or the commentary, whatever we saw from Swami Yamunacharya. Not only the Samvit Siddhi, he also comments from Purusha Nirnaya. Whatever Swami Yamunacharya has shown in Purusha Nirnaya and Samvit Siddhi, he comments about all these things very elaborately at the beginning of Gita Bhashyam. This is how we can see the connection between Swami Yamunacharya and Swami Ramanuja. So, as I already told you, I can even go on saying the story of Swami Ramanuja seeing Swami Yamunacharya after he departed to Sri Vaikuntham. I can say all those stories. The fingers were all folded. I can say all those stories. But what's the point here? What is important here is we can hear all those stories at many places today. Whether it is on YouTube or some podcast, somewhere we can hear one or the other way we can hear those stories. But these things, concentrating on the content, we cannot hear much, whether it is online or anywhere. So I have taken this example of showing how Swami Ramanuja was connected with Swami Yamunacharya in terms of knowledge. So if we see another example, that is from Sri Bhashya. Sri Bhashyam is nothing but an elaborate commentary for all the Vedanta Sutras or Brahma Sutras given by Vedavyasa. So for this Vedavyasa, whatever Vedanta Sutras were given by him, for that Swami Ramanuja did an elaborate commentary which was known as Sri Bhashya. But however, since this is elaborate, we might say that we don't have time to read it, all those things. No, Swami Ramanuja is not like that. He knows about us. That is, today we say that we don't have time for all these things to study. He knows all these things, and that's why he has given concise, not one concise format, much concise formats and 2 or 3 different other granthams. I'll go about it shortly. But if we see an example here, Dehendriya Manah Pranadhibhyaha Anyonanya Sadhanaha Nityo Vyapi Pratikshetram Atma Bhinna Swatas Sukhi. This is what Alavandar says in his Atma Siddhi. Who says this? Swami Ramanuja says this in his Sri Bhashyam. He says that this is what Swami Yamunacharya says. And then he also, what does this mean? This just means that one who is, that is the Atman. Who is that Atman? He is not the body, he is not the senses, he is not the mind, he is not the prana, he is not the intellect. He cannot be understood by any other means. He is self-manifested, he is eternal. This is what this shloka means. But however, I don't want to go into this shloka deeply. But however, if you see here the connection between Swami Ramanuja and Swami Yamunacharya, you can see Swami Ramanuja takes the shlokam from Atma Siddhi directly and says, this is what Swami Alavandar has said. So in this way, even in terms of content, we can see there is a lot of connection, not lot of connection, there is complete connection between Swami Alavandar and Swami Ramanuja. In this way, is this the only place where we have connections? No. As I told you, there are connections in Bhagavad Vishyam, there are connections many other granthams, rather than granthams, in many other places we can find a lot of connections. It's not 1 or 2, but due to paucity of time, I just told you about 1 or 2 connections in terms of content. If we see, there is a verse with which I would like to conclude. This is a verse, invocatory verse at the starting of Vedartha Sangraha. What is this Vedartha Sangraha? As I already told you before, I would be speaking about the concise formats of the elaborate commentary for Vedanta Sutras, which is Sri Bhashya. The concise formats of Sri Bhashya include: one is Vedartha Sangraha, which is the first concise format. Much concise format than that is Vedanta Deepa. Much concise format than that is the Vedanta Sara. Why did Swami Ramanuja do this? Because he knows very well that today we say that I cannot spend a lot of time just to learn all these things because I have a lot of other things to do. He knows that's what we are going to say. What he wants us to know, that is, he wants this knowledge to spread everywhere. That's why what did he do? He just, with all compassion, he just made it much concise with different granthams. So in this way, one of the concise format grantham of Sri Bhashya is Vedartha Sangraha. In this, we see the invocatory verse which goes like this: Param Brahmaivagnyam Brahmaparigatam Samsarati Tat Paropadhyalidham Vivasham Ashubhasyaspadamititi Shruti-Nyayapetam Jagati Vidatam Mohanamidam Tamoyenapastam Sahi Vijayate Yamunamunihi. So you can see the connection even here. So here it is not the connection in terms of content. He is showing how Swami Yamunacharya was. He is showing his devotion towards Yamunacharya. Rather than devotion, it shows the glories of Swami Yamunacharya. What did he do? He defeated many other arguments from many other different people, many other different parties. What were those arguments? Let us see that in very brief. If we see that, there was an argument which said that the Supreme Brahman or the Parabrahman had possessed ignorance sometime. And not only possessing ignorance, it even gets deluded and gets into the cycle of this samsara or the birth and death. So this was one kind of the argument. And there was another argument by another party saying that this Parabrahman with connection with another body or with someone else becomes, with that connection, it becomes influenced by karma. That is what another argument was. So in this way, whether it is influenced by karma or whether that Parabrahma or whether he is getting ignorant, all these things are opposite to the intended meaning of what Shrutis say. In this way, Vedas or Shruti, whatever is the intended meaning, that was getting really contradictory and this was getting spread everywhere to many people. But that should not happen is what Swami Yamunacharya's intent was and also Swami Ramanujacharya's intent. In this way, we see Swami Yamunacharya worked so hard for this, and what did he do? As he defeated in his childhood days Aki Alvan, in the same way he defeated, rather than not directly, he defeated all these arguments with all his compositions. Through all his compositions, he defeated all these arguments with so much ease. So that's what here Swami Ramanuja says, that's how was the knowledge of Swami Yamunacharya to such Yamunacharya who did not want any contradictions of the meanings of Vedas to spread anywhere. To such Yamunacharya, I bow down and I pay my namaskarams, says Swami Ramanuja, and this is how he had devotion towards Swami Yamunacharya, and this is the devotion that even we all should have towards our Guru or Acharya. By this, I would conclude by saying that as we see who is Swami Ramanuja, we all know that he is such an avatara Purusha, right? Such Swami Ramanuja himself wanted to learn under a Guru. Initially it was Swami Yamunacharya, but that didn't happen. We saw all those stories. But who are we? We are all primary mortals, right? So in this way, I would like to conclude by saying that whatever we have to learn, such Swami Ramanuja himself intended to learn under a Guru. Being primary mortals, we should also seek knowledge from Guru and learn from him, not from any other sources. By saying this, I would like to conclude my upanyasam. Again, I would like to express my gratitude to my Acharyan, Dr. Sri APN Swami, for having given me this opportunity to speak on this occasion of Swami Ramanuja's thirunakshatram. Hope I would meet you with another upanyasam with a different topic very soon. कवितार्किक सिंहाय कल्याण गुणशालिने श्रीमते वेंकटेशाय वेदांत गुरवे नमः वादिद्विप शिरोभंग पंचानन पराक्रमः श्रीमान् वेंकटनाथार्य चिरं विजयतां भुवि श्रीमते श्री लक्ष्मी नृसिंह दिव्यपादुका सेवक श्रीवन् षडोप श्री नारायण यतीन्द्र महादेशिकाय नमः श्रीमते श्रीवन् षडोप श्री रंगनाथ यतीन्द्र महादेशिकाय नमः श्रीमते श्री वात्स्य श्री कृष्णमार्य महादेशिकाय नमः अस्मद्गुरुभ्यो नमः।